Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, hosted and sponsored by Grand Theft World and the fine members at grandtheftworld.com. We got members behind the scenes. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Tonight, we're going to break open this past week's news. We're going to check it for some veracity, some context, some evidence. We're going to get to the bottom of some of these stories. We have a lot of stories to cover, and there was a lot of stories that happened in this past week of Grand Theft World history. We got this continuing saga of them trying to arrest the former president last week, or 2 weeks ago. They were going to arrest him. Then they weren't going to arrest him. Last week, they were going to arrest him. Now they arrested him. Nothing happens. So much ado about nothing. But I think for Trump, it's mission accomplished. They just took the hardest swing they've ever taken, with this Alvin Bragg character, who now probably should be under investigation because he's violated the Sixth Amendment rights of the former president by not disclosing the charges and the actual evidence behind the charges, more importantly.
A Manhattan grand jury on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Under New York state law, it is a felony to falsify business records with intent to defraud and an intent to conceal another crime. That is exactly what this case is about. 34 false statements made to cover up other crimes. These are felony crimes in New York State, no matter who you are. We cannot and will not normalize serious criminal conduct.
Tonight, Donald Trump, the first president in American history to become a criminal defendant. All day, New York City on high alert.
It's weird when they say high alert, it's just people with their hands in their pockets, people just standing around. This hyperbole is what much of the case is about. I've often thought that with the British monarchy, the crowns, the paraphernalia, is to distract you from the fact that these are just some people, actually. They're just people. How much of the amplification, hysteria, magnification of this case is actually serving entrenched systemic power? Some of you really love Donald Trump, and I'm okay with that. Some of you really hate Donald Trump, and I'm okay with that. What I'm interested in is systems. What I'm really interested in is change, real change being delivered to all of us. A genuine conversation and the opportunity for people who hate Trump and love Trump to come together and recognize our systems are not working. Our media is lying to us. Trials like this are being used as mass distractions. Huge amounts of money are being conveyed to the military-industrial complex. Finland's joining NATO. Julian Assange is still in prison, and we're talking about misdemeanors being amplified into felonies. You have to learn to put aside your personal feelings. You have to look at systemic corruption.
Police lining the streets around Trump Tower as Trump raised his fist, giving a wave as he stepped into a car.
Like they're actually having to talk about the nature of it. He waved his fist, giving a wave. Then I think it was this finger, the index, that went down next, and then the dirty finger, then the wedding finger, then this little piggy stayed at home, though.
As his motorcade made its way downtown, sources tell ABC News that apart from his Secret Service detail, the former president rode alone. No lawyers, no family, no advisors with him.
He's alone. He's ruined everything. So this is sort of anti-Trump, isn't it? Because if this was a pro-Trump channel, Donald Trump needed nobody. He used only his own breath and farts to pump himself full of courtroom power for the arraignment, a word you now know about and care about. So the inflections, even around the minor details, inform us what the media outlet wants us to believe. The very fact that there's this much hysteria shows you something significant is happening. Even though it's ultimately ephemeral amplification that we're dealing with, there is something underneath it. And what I believe that is, and what Trump's success has always been based on, is all of us know the system is broken. What I believe Trump was, perhaps will forever remain, is a kind of organic wrecking ball and rhetorical genius. My personal belief is that Donald Trump is not able to change the systems of corruption, whether he wanted to or not. I also believe that these charges are ultimately a way of removing him from the presidential candidacy. I believe that's true. But the main thing, the potent energy that has to be addressed is people are sort of shuddering, shaking, vibrating with rage against this corruption, and centralized power, whether it's media, political or financial, is trying to repress it and locate it all in the figure of Trump and these charges, which I know some of you think are serious and a lot of you think are ridiculous.
Inside, Trump surrendered. He was arrested, booked and processed like a common criminal.
Like a common criminal, which we on this channel believe him to be. Let's look over now at Fox. A martyr like Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, or even, actually, yes, I'm gonna say this, Jesus.
Jesus. Jesus was arrested and murdered.
What's amazing about that is that the reporter just goes, instead of, Jesus?
President Trump, will you come speak to us, President Trump?
Yeah, he's just going to break off from that and have a casual chat at a time. President Trump, what's going on?
Who are you? Where are you going? No, do your research, Sutton.
Then that first picture, Trump at the defendant's table.
That first picture, that first tender kiss, your first lover, the virginity of the pictures finally taken. Ridiculous. It's amplifying everything into significance. When that takes place, you better be sure that something else is happening. I don't mean in a conspiratorial way. I don't believe that there's any cadre saying, let's use this Trump trial and underneath it we'll slip through all this legislation. I'm just meaning the whole spectacle itself. While our eyes are here, it's business as usual. You better believe billions are moving around. You better believe that the truly powerful are doing their thing right now.
Pleading not guilty to those 34 felony charges that he repeatedly and fraudulently falsified New York business records to conceal criminal conduct that hid damaging information from the voting public during the 2016 presidential election.
I mean, even when you just read that does sound concealed damaging information, bit Hunter Biden laptop, used funds, bit Steele's dossier. Now, I know if you're a super pro-Democrat person, then you'll go, no, it's different. It has to be different than that. It has to be different. But it's not different enough, is it? That's our whole argument. It's not different enough. If you want to stop the rise of someone like Trump, if that's your deal, you have to offer something meaningfully different. We are going to change America. We are going to change these systems. We are going to help you live a meaningful life. We are going to help you awaken to who you truly are. And how are we going to do that? We're going to stop our relationship with the powerful dominant interests that currently control the trajectory and agenda of power. That can only mean this: get money out of politics, create more decentralized democracy. No one's talking about that because on the significant issues, they all agree.
RFK Jr. is going to throw his hat in the ring. He's going to run against the current president, former vice president, Joseph Biden, is going to run against RFK Jr. And, you know, they're equally matched in their rhetorical skills. It should be a very interesting campaign.
This just into CNN. Anti-vaccine quack Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has filed paperwork with the Federal Election Commission to run for president as a Democrat. In launching his presidential bid, Kennedy is the latest in a long line of family members to enter politics. So far, only Marianne Williamson, who last month launched her second long-shot campaign, has entered the Democratic primary against Biden. Kennedy is such a healthcare menace. In 2019, even his cousins wrote an op-ed criticizing his anti-science views on life-saving vaccines.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the son of Bobby Kennedy and nephew of JFK, has just declared he's running for president and will primary Joe Biden to be the Democratic nominee. RFK Jr. wants to pick up where his family left off.
The easiest thing for a politician to do is to appeal to our greed, to our anger, to our fear. What my father tried to do is much more complicated, but you can do it, which is to make people feel that they're part of a community and that they're on a heroic journey to do something that is going to be great, that's going to be historical. People respond to that kind of vision. I saw it happen to my father, and we can do it again in this country.
So RFK Jr. has a vision. I mean, at least he has one. Biden has none. RFK Jr.'s lane is on the populist left. Unlike Biden, he's against the deep state, obviously, because of what happened to his dad and uncle. Anti-censorship. Remember, the Biden White House censored him over vaccines. He's riding a hot anti-corporate streak, especially against big pharma and big tech.
You see, the assault on not only on the poor in our country, but there was a $3.8 trillion shift in wealth from the middle class and the poor to this new aristocracy of billionaires, a lot of them from Silicon Valley, who own the companies that were the biggest beneficiaries. And they were the ones who were censoring criticism of the lockdowns that were making them rich. So if you're outside of this system and you're looking in, it looks crooked.
NATO expands once more. It's like the 34th time since the wall came down. They keep expanding and they keep saying Putin's an aggressor. So it's hilarious, and yet it's tragic because it could lead to World War III. There's a whole bunch of lives on the line on these strategies that aren't so well thought out, but they do have more of they make more sense if you think of it from a globalist, uniting the world under one government type of perspective. And to do that, they would have to crush America and destroy it, make sure it's not a seat at the table anymore. So they're working on that, but they're not quite there yet.
Finland is now officially a member of the world's largest military alliance.
This is an historic day. We welcome Finland as the newest member of our alliance.
The Nordic nation completed one of the fastest accession processes in NATO's history. Finland applied to join in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. In the process, Finland ended its decades-old policy of military non-alignment.
It will change Russia's posture towards Europe and NATO in general in the future.
Here's what the historic expansion means for the alliance and security in Europe. First of all, Finland adds more than 800 miles to NATO's border with Russia. Russia said NATO's enlargement is a threat to its security and national interests.
В этих условиях мы принимаем ответные меры. Отстаиваем безопасность союзного государства.
Finland's membership of NATO came after months of diplomatic disputes with Turkey. Finland applied to join the alliance at the same time as Sweden, but Turkey alleged the two northern European countries had connections to Kurdish militant groups fighting the Turkish state. Eventually, Ankara ratified Finland's membership, but Sweden is still waiting to join the alliance, which needs the approval of all existing members to accept any new entrants.
Sweden definitely hopes to be a member of NATO by the end of the year.
This past week, Bigtree hosted Neil deGrasse Tyson, and they sat down and they talked about this word science. And what came to view is the science wasn't really followed during the pandemic.
Of course. And I actually believe that we are seeing a rise in all-cause mortality around the world, that many studies are now showing the more vaccinated a country was, the higher their excess mortality now. So we may retrospectively look back and find out that this vaccine was more deadly than the virus ever was. That still holds out for our reference to this. And then, armchair quarterback, we will decide who was glad they signed on, or,
Monday quarterback.
Okay. Yeah. We will decide who was glad they signed on to the social contract. I do not believe that things can be mandated on me, especially. Here's my problem. I cannot trust science, and my audience will not trust science, that continues to say we will not let top officials at the table that have now proven to be right. When we see emails that said just keep them out of the room, and they are the ones that ended up being right about this virus. I will not trust the head task force when they come forward and say, I always knew it wouldn't stop transmission, even though you and Neil deGrasse Tyson were telling you get it to protect each other. I always knew it never could do that. So we're going to have a hard time getting back to a place of trust. What we need now is a regulatory agency and people in charge that get back to actually listening to, as you said, those people that are challenging this from all sides. The challenge has to be allowed into the room, and it's not. Science is dead in my mind. The scientific method is dead, and I think the coronavirus experiment proves that we are in a terrifying moment of science. And I reach out to you to think about what we've said here today and say, is he right? Did the scientific method take place? Is it taking place now, retrospectively? Even if you want to argue in an emergency, we made decisions and we rushed things. Why is Peter McCullough and why is Robert Malone and the people that were right, why are they not at the table now? You started this out by saying every challenge should come in, every way to say that we don't agree with the hypothesis. Maybe these people say you don't need the vaccine, there's a way through this, or we should be tactical with the vaccine. All of these people were kept out of the conversation.
All I can comment
and you were wanting me to sign on to a social contract where the scientific method isn't being used.
Okay. That list of highly pedigreed medical professionals that you are citing, I'm not interested in medical pedigree. I'm interested in medical consensus, in scientific consensus. The moment someone says, well, I'm of this highfalutin school or this, that's like, okay, that means they're going to say something that goes against the consensus, and they want to use that to help other people follow what it is they say. I'm just saying you need someone who represents a medical consensus here to have that conversation with.
We had a medical consensus around a product that we knew nothing about, and a medical consensus around a virus that told us they knew nothing about. They kept telling us we know very little about it. So why was there a medical consensus that was keeping out renowned scientists from the conversation, when they were telling us on television, we don't know a lot about this virus, we're trying to figure it out. Scientists that were on the ground, that were dealing with patients, were being censored, were being shut down. Their YouTube channels were being shut down. Their LinkedIns were being shut down.
Because the individual scientist does not matter. We started this conversation on that very fact.
But the scientific method does.
Yes, of course it does. And the scientific method producing a consensus. And whatever is that consensus
all
at
right,
any
then
given
I'll
moment
tell you this.
is kind of the best you
when
have.
I can look now.
That, my friends, is a train wreck. That's just, oh my God, we just watched somebody ruin their career. So sorry, Neil. You had a nice shot at trying to be the voice of science and to be Mr. Science Communicator. Maybe you're communicating badly, but if you're communicating that badly, maybe you shouldn't be a science communicator. But I heard you clearly, though. You said the individual scientist doesn't matter. What matters is the scientific consensus. And that is not how science works. Science isn't a place where a bunch of people hang out and agree on something. It's the opposite of that. Science is actually more of a verb than a noun. It's a process. It's a method. It involves skepticism and questioning and bare knuckle debates. And as Neil Bohr said, science advances one funeral at a time because people cling to outmoded, outdated, and wrong ideas. It happens. That is the history of science. All of science is one long history of people trying to prevent it from happening because it was advancing against their pet theories.
So it was quite an enlightening interview, and we're going to check into some of that. Probably have to dip into some of tonight's intermission to get to some of that. We also have stories like Israel running medical experiments on its own people. And there's a history with medical experiments on people who moved to Israel in the first place. And they're kind of tone deaf to the history repeating itself over there. We're going to look into stories like that because I don't think it did a service to the people of Israel for their government to cut a deal with one of these World Economic Forum leaders, Pfizer et al., and run experiments and use that experimental data to get preferred access for their population.
So get this. So Israel was the in bed the most with Pfizer, right? And they had a deal. So how has tiny Israel beat out bigger countries on COVID-19 vaccinations, securing a steady stream of vials and inoculating a larger share of its citizenry than any other? How? Well, Israel paid a premium. It locked in an early supply of Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines and struck a unique deal. They'd get vaccines if Israel gave Pfizer the data on their citizens.
Oh.
Here it is. The nation of some 9 million promised Pfizer a swift vaccine rollout along with data from Israel's centralized trove of medical statistics to study whether herd immunity is achieved after reaching a certain percentage of vaccination coverage in Israel. That's according to their agreement. We said to Pfizer that the moment they give us the vaccine, we'll be able to vaccinate at the speed they've never heard of, said their health minister. Israel's small size and technologically advanced public health system offer an attractive model for Pfizer to demonstrate the impact of the vaccine on an entire population.
What?
Pfizer has not signed a similar agreement with any other company, spokesperson Jared Pitts said. This is from January 31st, 2021. This is right as they were rolling it out.
So the data that they're giving them is they roll out the vaccine, people take it, and then they give Pfizer all the data of that? So that just sounds like a medical experiment.
It sounds like it. Israel's, the vaccine for data trade-off has sparked impassioned debate in Israel among data privacy experts. Biotech researchers and the country's own medical ethics board weighing the potential benefits of mining the population for vaccine insights against the potential abuse of millions of personal medical records. We need to understand that Israel's agreement with Pfizer is going to be one of the, I would say, widest medical experiments on humans in the 21st century.
Wow. It is that. Wow.
They're just saying it, Kurt.
Let's kick off tonight's adventure with Luke Rudowski from wearechange.org and thebestpoliticalshirts.com. Let's get his report from earlier today, and then we'll delve into some of these more deeper thought pieces for the evening.
Yes, my man. Best thing to do. These guys have no powers of detainment. Just walk into your building.
Nobody said anything about detaining.
Yeah, of course, of course.
No,
you're trying to find him for a cigarette, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Walk into the building.
It's not a crime.
Yeah. Okay. Just walk in. Perfect. Amazing. Have a good day, my man. There it is.
Bye-bye.
Lots of scams out there, and I think it's fair to say the government is one of the biggest ones of them all.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions. We can get into the show, we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.